Welcome to another episode of the Daily Wisdom Words podcast, where every week we talk to folks who bring you one step closer to that feeling of hope. I am your co-host, Neil Trivedi.
And I am your co-host, Rini O'Day.
And this week we are welcoming mental health advocate, author, and a fellow podcaster like us, Lucy, all the way in England. Hey, Lucy, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thank you.
Hi, Lucy. How's England?
Yes, all good. Actually sunny at the moment, which makes a nice
wow.
change.
Well, I take credit for that. So no. Hey, Lucy, sweetie, can you give us a little background on yourself? We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so basically as a child, I always felt like I was shy and lacked confidence. And I didn't always feel like I fit in school and didn't really have sort of confidence to speak up in class or reading out loud or anything like that. So it was something that I'd always struggled with, but basically just had accepted that that was just life and that was how every teenage girl felt. And it wasn't actually until I left school and I went to college and then I got a job that I realised that actually this is a little bit more than just feeling shy. This is more than just feeling a bit nervous, and actually this has impacted my life. So I need to get some kind of professional support with it.
And
that
I think
time lies like this has anything to do with anxiety? Were you familiar with it, familiar with the symptoms, or was it just something is not right, so I got to get checked out?
So I actually didn't know the word anxiety even existed. I literally I had a severe panic attack in the supermarket. Again, didn't know it was a panic attack. Literally just heart racing, sweating, shaking, crying, feeling like I was going to be sick, and then just all of these physical symptoms all at once, plus obviously mind racing and all of those things as well. And basically I was like, this isn't normal. I need to get some help. And I didn't even know what to say, so I phoned the receptionist and literally cried down the phone, and they were like, I think you need to come in and see a doctor.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Panic attacks are no fun. Can you describe what happens to the body when a panic attack hits?
So in my experience, it's like an overwhelming amount of physical symptoms. I get so many physical symptoms when I have a panic attack, and that's kind of how it presents itself. So for me, it's literally like my heart's racing. I feel like it's like going to jump out my chest. I feel like my throat's closing up. Basically, it feels like I'm going to die, for want of a better explanation. The symptoms are quite closely linked with heart attacks, which really doesn't help things because you feel like you are going to die. You feel like you're having a heart attack. So that doesn't help because, especially for me, one of my triggers was health anxiety as well. I was worried about having heart problems in particular. So it was like a vicious cycle, really. I would have a panic attack about something that triggered my anxiety, which would then cause all of these symptoms, which would then make me think I was having a heart attack, which would cause more physical symptoms, more anxiety, more panic, and it would just go round and round and round.
Would you go to the hospital?
So I have on a few occasions, yeah. So on one occasion I fainted in a public place, and an ambulance was called, and I had to go in the ambulance to a hospital. There was a few health scares. They thought maybe it was my heart or my brain, but all of the tests came back saying it wasn't. And in the end, I was told it was basically a symptom of my panic attacks were causing me to faint. So yeah, that happened on quite a few occasions. Touch wood, now I haven't fainted for a few years because I'm able to manage those symptoms. And when I get those symptoms, I can tell myself it's okay, you're having a panic attack, or this is just severe anxiety, it will pass, and I can breathe through it and use the tools that I've got to help me through instead of it getting to the extreme state of me fainting.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into that a little bit as we talk more about some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, aside from therapy and all that, to just kind of stay grounded. But before we do that, and originally I'm going to reword this question because I realize it's full. I was going to ask, how do you now that define anxiety? But I realized that would be foolish because it's so open-ended. Different people have different symptoms, and different people have different interpretations of what being anxious is. So I'll just ask you, what are some of the most common symptoms people have when it comes to anxiety? How would somebody who maybe is in the same place that you were a few years ago, who doesn't know about anxiety, what are some of the signs, symptoms that are most common in people that maybe they should be aware of or take notice of?
Yeah, sure. So like you say, you're exactly right. The symptoms are different for everyone. The most common ones, things like stomachache, headache, racing heart, tight chest, feeling sick, sweaty, shaky, they're probably the most common physical symptoms. You also then get what I call cognitive symptoms, so things like overthinking or lack of confidence, feeling on edge, feeling jumpy. And then you've also got the behavioural side of it as well. So if you're avoiding certain activities or if you're struggling to sleep, those can also be symptoms of anxiety as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that one of the things by reading your bio, I know that how you started, a counselor suggested mindfulness to you at the start of the journey and how that, so can you talk about that? How did you incorporate, first of all, for anyone who may not be familiar, what is the concept of mindfulness and how did you start incorporating that into your life? Like what methods or what ways did you do it to incorporate that? Was it affirmations? Was it breathing techniques or anything else?
Yeah, so when I went to my counsellor and I was diagnosed with anxiety, she recommended a book for me. And basically, I ordered the book straight away. I was like, I'm going to be a really good student here. I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can about anxiety so that I can help myself while the counsellor is obviously helping me too. The book was about 800 pages long and really overwhelming. So ironically, I never read that particular book and I still haven't to this day. I probably should now because I'm probably ready. But basically,
it'd be a trigger right there for me.
Literally, it was. I was like, I don't understand these words. It's 800 pages long. Like, this isn't helpful for me in this state right now. But luckily, it did make me intrigued enough to just go online, read articles, watch YouTube videos, and that's literally what I did. That's how I learned all of these habits. And mindfulness was one that I picked up quite early. And basically, I would just go for walks in nature. I would look around me, just really ground myself in the present moment, because that's all mindfulness is, really. Put really simply, it is focusing on the things around you, being present in the moment, which should take your mind off the worries and anxieties and things going on in your mind.
So nature.
Yeah, nature is such a great way to do it. There's so many beautiful things out there in nature if we just open our eyes to look at them. So and even just being around, if there's water or like the rustling leaves, that can be really calming and relaxing as well.
And knowing what you know now and all the information, we'll talk in a little bit about you. You even wrote a book, you're a podcaster, and you're bringing that awareness in a similar manner that we are as podcasters. What do you do on struggling days these days? If you find out, okay, this has been a really tough day for me and I'm really struggling, how do you cope with it?
Yeah, so of course I do still have anxiety. I always say that you don't recover or heal or stop or overcome or any of those unhelpful words. For me, it's all about understanding and managing. So that's the difference basically between then and now. Now I feel like I understand my triggers and I understand my symptoms. So when those come up, I know what I need to do to help myself in that moment. Things like mindfulness or having a nap or having an early night or watching a comedy TV show because it makes me laugh, or reading a book so that I can feel like I'm in another world. Like I know all of those tools that help me now, whereas before I didn't. So that for me is the main difference, and that's something that is an ongoing thing. Triggers change, triggers get worse as well. Like at the moment, I'm struggling a lot with spiders. I had my most severe panic attack just 4 days ago, based on a spider.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow.
So things. Even though I feel like I'm so much better, things do still come up, and you find out like it doesn't just get fixed. And so for me, it's just about constantly learning and evolving with how my anxiety is.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about flight or fight? That's what our body goes into, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're your two responses when your body senses a threat. And it all goes back to when it was needed. So like when we were cavemen, and that those were the two primal instincts, and they were needed to help you survive. Yes, exactly. So now we don't need that as humans. Now we are in a much safer environment. However, our minds still have that response to threat. And that's something that now, when my anxiety is triggered, the tools that I use will help me to calm that response, and sort of deal with it more rationally.
What do you recommend parents do to help their children?
So I think that it's something that should be taught in schools, and it isn't, unfortunately. Like I said, the first time I was diagnosed with anxiety was the first time I heard the word, and that's not helpful. That's not good for anyone. So really, from a young age, children should be taught things like mindfulness and affirmations and gratitude and journaling and just expressing their feelings. So many children feel like they can't say that they're upset because their parents are going to say, stop crying, or there's nothing to worry about, or you're being silly.
Which is the worst thing you could say to your child.
Exactly. So yeah, just being really supportive and showing them that they can express their feelings to you and that you will understand and listen, even if you don't understand, because sometimes as a parent it is really, really hard to face that your child, like to accept that your child is feeling that way. But it's so important that you just show them that you're listening and that you care and that you're there for them.
Continuing on that same thought, like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about anxiety, especially for those that may not struggle with it as you did, or we all do in some shape or form, deal with these kind of issues? What are some of the things that people should know about anxiety that maybe they don't, or they have a misconception about it, or they have maybe a stereotypical opinion from a misportrayed anxiety in the movies or TV shows or whatever? So what would you like them, or what should they know, rather? What should they be aware of?
So I think that probably the biggest one that I've heard and experienced myself is that people think that it's all in your head. That's the most annoying one. Yeah. Because it's like, I think to some extent every single person, especially since COVID, struggles with anxiety of some kind, and I think it's actually a lot easier now for people to understand, because I think more people are experiencing it. But yeah, for me that's the biggest one. People seem to think that we're making it up and that we're exaggerating it, and that it's all just going on in our head, when actually to us it feels very, very real. And that thing that might not scare other people or cause them anxiety, to us feels life-threatening and feels really, really scary to deal with. So yeah, I think it's just about being compassionate, really. I think I would really like to see that people just accept how other people feel and just show them that they're there to listen to them and support them, even if they don't understand it themselves.
What are some of tips and things that you can recommend, aside from, obviously, we should all, when dealing with mental health issues, seek out therapy. That's so crucial, and seek out the right kind of therapy, by the way. Do your research, folks. Don't just go by what everyone else is saying. But in addition to that, what are some of the things, whether is it breath work, maybe grounding yourself? What are some things you do, and what are some things people can do in their day-to-day lives just to kind of keep it under control? Obviously, you can't cure it completely, but just handle it better, cope with it better. What are some things people can do?
Yeah, so there's a few different things I would suggest for this, and I think it's all about finding something that works for each person specifically. So like for me personally, when I was first diagnosed with anxiety, I carved out the first hour of my morning to specific habits, things like exercise, journaling, meditation, really making sure that I exercised my mind and body before I started my day, before I picked up my phone, before I scrolled social media, things like that, just so that you really start really positively. And for me, that makes a huge difference, and it's something that even now, 10 years on from receiving counselling for the first time, something that I still am really keen to do, because it does make such an impact on my mood and my mindset and my mental health. So yeah, that's really good. But if you don't have an hour, obviously no one has an hour really, do they, in their day spare? So 15 minutes, 10 minutes, anything is better than nothing. And if you really can't commit any extra time, there's a few sneaky ways that you can add it into your day. So things like household chores, like washing up, you can incorporate mindfulness into that. So really taking the time to focus on the textures and the warmth of the water.
Wait a minute. So telling my husband doing housework is a trigger for me is not.
I mean,
sorry.
I personally would be using that as some mindfulness time. I think, yeah, it's a really nice way to relax. I mean, obviously no one likes doing it, don't get me wrong, I don't like doing my house chores, but I do find it really relaxing. And when you put that spin on it, that actually this is going to be my time for me, and this is going to be my time to focus on the present moment, it makes it a little bit more enjoyable. Give it a go.
I love washing dishes. I find washing dishes is mindfulness, even though I have a dishwasher.
Yeah, definitely. And my kitchen window looks out onto the garden as well, so I really like
mine does too. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I watch the hummingbirds.
Say that, like, it's not about it's about finding that one activity, right? It's how you approach it and how you do it rather than what it is. So it could be even something as, mundane as vacuuming the floors, but if you can access that mindfulness of, okay, really get into it, then even that would work, or anything else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who likes to do laundry? Because I'll do your dishes if you do my laundry.
Wow.
No. I know, right?
Let's get out. You've been, that was great, by the way. Thank you for suggesting that. And one other way that people can learn more about what you have to say about the subject, very crucial, is you wrote a book. So tell us, how and when did that book come about, and what's it about, and what all is in it, and all that good stuff.
And where we can find it.
Yeah, sure. So, my book was actually brought about because of COVID. One positive COVID story for you.
Wow.
Because I had so much more spare time, and it was something that I'd always wanted to do. Like, since learning how to understand and manage my anxiety, I always felt like I should probably write a book, because I had all of this knowledge and it felt like it was wrong basically just to keep it to myself. Especially going back to that whole story with the counsellor and the huge mindfulness book, I thought there has to be a better way. I couldn't actually find, even now I still can't find another very simple, easy to understand anxiety book. They don't really exist. They are full of really, really long words that nobody understands, and to be honest, no one really needs to understand. And when people are in that heightened anxiety state, that's too hard for them to access. It's too much and it's too overwhelming. So basically that was what I based my book on. I wanted it to just be something that someone could pick up. It's only 100 pages long on purpose. It's just to the point. It's really simple. It's really practical, full of tips and tools, and basically just to understand and manage your anxiety based on my own experience.
What's it called?
Yeah.
So it's called Stand Up to Anxiety. My podcast is called the same.
Perfect name.
Yes, I do like it, because that's basically what I feel like I'm doing now. I feel like you can either let it control you or you can control it. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that is perfect.
You mentioned the podcast with the same name. How did that come about?
So my podcast came about a bit later. So when I launched my book, in the July, it was then Mental Health Day in October, and I was like, what am I going to do for Mental Health Day? I felt like I want to do something really big, and I want to do something that really helps people. And then I basically just decided to start a podcast, because why not just stick to a whole weekly commitment that I'm going to have to keep up with forever, just as a mental health launch. So that's why I did it, and the same title, because I mean, like we said, the title is quite powerful. But yeah, I love doing it. It's again, I keep them really short and sweet. I like them to just be really to the point and practical and easy, just for people to listen to and take away something really simple to help them straight away without much effort and time needed.
So Lucy, how often do you find anxiety and depression go hand in hand in people?
Yeah, so I mean, from my own personal experience, I was diagnosed with both at a severe level at the same time, and yeah, I have noticed that quite a few people have both. For me personally, when I started working on my anxiety, my depression kind of just got better on its own. Like, I didn't do anything specifically to help my depression, I focused on supporting the anxiety, because for me that was the thing that was holding me back in my life. It was stopping me from going to supermarkets and going to work and driving my car. Whereas the depression I could kind of mask and get on with it and pretend that I was okay, even though I wasn't. So I think sort of without realizing, the mindfulness, the journaling, the talking, and all of the other habits obviously helped with my depression. And now, I mean, I don't feel depressed by any stretch of the imagination ever, really, and I haven't for the last few years. But anxiety and panic attacks do still pop up for me.
Hand in hand kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's like anything, isn't it? If you have one, then you're obviously more likely to have another of the same type of thing. And I think that's very similar with mental health conditions.
Yeah, because I know with my clinical depression, I thought for a while that am I developing like clinical anxiety as well, because so many of the symptoms that you've talked about, it has matched. I've had those attacks where, the face goes pale and I'm breathing hard, but eventually when talking to doctors and psychologists and all that, I realized that it wasn't anxiety. It was the same symptoms, but it was stemming from my depression, not from anxiety. But so I can see how there's so many mental health issues. It's like they're distinct in their own way, but then also share so many tendencies that it's easy to mistake one for the other.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's it's the time that we are, basically coming out of the closet with mental health issues. People are now talking about them, and people like you educating us on this it's the best time right now, because people are getting help, and you don't have to have that panic attack on the subway, and
or if you do, you know how to handle it.
Or you know how to,
you're more in control than before you had that awareness. Now at least you can have the ability to cope with it. Distinguishing between, okay, I'm just a little nervous and I could shake it off, versus an actual panic attack. So did you ever find that happening to you? Like, you could be nervous about a lot of things if you're trying out something for the first time, or if you're giving a public speech, but there's a difference between the two. So did that ever happen? And B, I guess this is like a two-part question. What are some of the signs where we can learn to distinguish between the two things, and just nervousness versus actual, actual panic attack, which is much more serious?
Yeah, sure. So from my own experience, if it was to come up multiple times, so if we stick with the public speaking example, so if the first time I did it, I felt a bit nervous, I got up on stage, I felt fine, I did it, I came off and felt fine, and then the next time I went to do it, I was okay, then I would think that was just nerves. If I did it and I had all of the symptoms, the same symptoms as before, I did it, I still felt nervous during, I still felt nervous after, and the next time I still felt nervous, then I would put that down as anxiety. But you can use the same tools to help manage both, because like you say, we do get everyday nerves. I mean, we're only human. Of course, things make us nervous and we get a bit worried about things. So you can use the same kind of tools to understand your triggers and symptoms and to manage it, things like mindfulness. So kind of use them in the same way, but try to notice the patterns. And I would just say if it's a recurring thing, it's probably anxiety.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about breath work and anxiety?
Yeah, sure. So this is one that is quite an interesting one for me to talk about, because I can't do breath work in panic attacks because it makes
me
Oh, okay.
This is fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. So remember I said about the fainting. So before I faint, I feel lightheaded. When you do breath work, sometimes it can make you feel lightheaded. So if I'm in a panic attack and I do breath work and I feel lightheaded, it then triggers me thinking that I'm going to faint, which obviously causes a lot more anxiety. So for me, it's something that actually doesn't work in moments of high anxiety or a panic attack. If I'm just feeling a bit nervous and worried, breath work is great for me, and it's something that I really like to do. but yeah, I can't use it in the severe moments for that reason. I'm yet to find anyone else that's the same as me with that. So if anyone's the same, please reach out.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a tendency in this, especially with the bombardment of social media, posting things so irresponsibly. Don't get me wrong, they're definitely helpful. So people like you are definitely so helpful. But then there are also others who take generalized things and pretty much make it out to be in articles that, oh, this means this. And it doesn't always. Everybody has different symptoms, has different ways to cope, right? And even a popular method that worked for 50 other people may not work for you, right? Or may not work for me or Rini. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that's a pattern that we all unfortunately fall in. We read something on social media or Google and think, oh, this is it. But we have to see, okay, how does this apply to us individually? And that's so crucial, right? To find out what works for us, and not, even if so many other people say something works, it may or may not help you.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Lucy, do you offer classes on your website?
Yeah, so I have a couple of workshops available.
I knew that. I was just testing.
I wanted you to say it.
Of course you did. Yeah, I do workshops now as well. So that's normally a mix of video and workbooks. I also have a children's range available as well, like we were talking about earlier. I think it's so important to teach children from a young age. So I've incorporated that into my work now as well.
And I think that, okay, so are you of the mindset that, medication and
like therapy and everything?
Yeah, thank you. Or are you just all therapy, or, what do you agree with? What don't you agree with?
So I think it's completely different for everyone. I've tried everything. So I had counselling sessions. I've been on medication. Now I manage it solely with the tools we've talked about today, and just a firm understanding of my anxiety and the support of people around me. But yeah, I've tried medication and counselling as well, and I recommend both. Both really helped me in the time that I needed them. I think everyone's journey is different, and I think that seeking support, especially at the start, is definitely what everybody should be doing to get that diagnosis, and also to get the initial support to help you start the journey. From there, obviously, if you want to explore self-help and personal development habits, obviously they're great to complement it. Medication, for me, I was put on medication after a severe panic attack that basically meant that I couldn't go to work. I felt like I was having a heart attack, and all of the things we talked about earlier. And I was put on medication to help try and mask the symptoms. But yeah, for me personally, after a while, I decided to come off of it because the side effects were outweighing the benefits. But again, that's different for everybody. There's so many different medication types out there. So again, working with a professional to find the right one for you. And just like I said, everyone's journey is completely different. There isn't a one size fits all.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to find what works for you. And a good place to start is Lucy's website.
Yeah, tell us find you. And even, you talked about your podcast and your book. Tell us about your website. And I believe are you on YouTube too, right?
Yes. So I don't actively post on YouTube anymore, but there are some old videos on there. My podcast is weekly, so that still goes out. And yeah, everything is linked on my website. So on my website, you can find all the links to all of my books and journals on Amazon. I've also got the digital versions available on my website. You just said, I've got the workshops as well. So I offer one-to-one mentorship, but to sort of a select few people that are really in the right space for that at the time. So yeah, a few options available on my website.
And can you give everyone your social media accounts?
Yeah, sure. So I'm most active on Instagram, which is at LucyJSmith_26. I'll send you the link as well, so you can pop it in the show notes. But yeah, that's where I'm most active.
Perfect.
Oh,
And what's your website, sweetie?
So it's lucyjsmith.com.
this has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
So
I
you
love
so much.
this episode. This
Thank
is
you.
great. And I hope that everyone checks out your website, because I think that you know what you're talking about and you can help people.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
You have a good night over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in, and a huge thank you to Lucy for telling her story and inspiring so many people out there. Be sure to hit like on this video and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Thank you everyone once again, and we will see you right here next week at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Have a good one.